Well, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Will Follett, a producer here at Bisnow, and so excited to welcome you to today's webinar, AI Digital Transformation and Modernization in Commercial Real Estate. Really big topic for us. This is the third in the webinar series we've been doing over the past 18 months or so, talking through some of the latest trends at the intersection of real estate, of technology, and AI. Really been a productive, fantastic conversation so far, and really excited to continue it with today's fantastic group of folks. So a lot to discuss today, a lot of things to run through, a lot of things to think about. But a couple quick things before we jump in. All attendees are on mute and without video, but please feel free, as some of you are already, saying hello in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Say hi. Pleasure to have you with us this afternoon. We still want this to be as interactive as possible, so please submit any questions you have in the Q&A section, and time allowing, we'll try to get to as many of them as we can towards the end or sort of throughout the program. There will also be a couple poll questions coming up throughout the conversation. Please let us know your thoughts if you feel like you have a perspective or something you want to share there. And if you miss any of the panel, don't worry. We'll send around a replay to all of you right afterwards. Want to, of course, thank our sponsors for the program, CodeLit and BizCred. Their support makes events like this possible. Always appreciate the support they bring to the table. You'll hear from Cody from CodeLit on the webinar today, talking about some of the work they're doing. And then stick around, make sure at the end for Biznow's kind of quick, or BizCred's 1-minute demo at the end to get access to the attendee list if you stick around to the end, free of charge. So without further ado, we've got a fantastic panel for us today. Really excited about it. Cody Littlewood, like I mentioned, CEO of CodeLit. Brian Roach, Managing Director of Atlantic Retail. Avi Bhatnagar, Head of Technology Strategy at CBRE. Daniel Fenton, Head of Product at the AI platform over at JLL. And moderating for us, Bill Williams, Head of Sales at Introl. Really, really excited about this conversation. Really looking forward to it. We'll turn over to the panelists and to do a quick self-intro, and we'll go ahead and get started. So Bill, turn it over to you. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Will. As Will said, I'm the head of sales for Introl. We are a industry leading provider of rapid GPU deployments in the data center. I've spent my entire professional career either working in or selling to a data center. Clearly, data centers are a hot topic in real estate and in AI. So I'm thrilled to be here, thrilled to talk through everything with the folks on the call today. Looking forward to it. Brian, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So Brian Roach, Managing Director at Atlantic Retail. Been with the firm about 20 years. As a firm, we are 9 offices strong, primarily East Coast, servicing retailers, retail owners, and investors with tenant representation, landlord representation, capital markets, property management, and corporate services. Like I said, we've been around for just over 30 years now.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you, Brian. Avi, how about you?
Sure. I head tech strategy at CBRE. So broadly looking into emerging technologies coming in across all our segments, built by partner decisions, making strategic technology investments multi-year, evaluating enterprise fit. So that's who I am. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Welcome. Good to see you. Daniel, how about you?
Hey, everybody. I'm Daniel Fenton at JLL. We've been around since the 18th century, global commercial real estate services firm. And my role is to empower all of my colleagues with AI. So the 115,000 people around the world working in commercial real estate at JLL with the AI tools that they need to do their job, as well as all of our software development teams. So thousands of folks, part of JLL Technologies, that are building for our businesses and our clients and our own kind of internal needs.
Awesome. Yeah, welcome your perspective on this topic, obviously. Cody, last but not
I'm Cody Littlewood, the CEO of CodeLit. We're a custom software development firm with a focus on mobile, web, and AI, of course. So we have a heavy focus in commercial real estate. The vast majority of our customers are in the commercial real estate space, and I have the unique privilege of also being a commercial real estate owner and investor. And so we're implementing a lot of AI solutions on that side as well.
Awesome. Fantastic. All right. Everybody ready? We'll jump in. We'll make it as painless as possible. Right out of the gate. So talking about integration and strategic fit for AI. How should real estate companies evaluate AI's role in their existing tech stack? When is it the right fit, and when is it the wrong solution? Cody, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I think I mean AI is obviously a huge buzzword, right? And so a lot of people are think it can be used for almost everything, and I think it's going to be kind of the magic bullet. And I think it can be incredibly useful. Any area, we're seeing a lot of applications, any area where there's high volume repetitive process. So, everything from lease abstraction to on the multifamily side, doing like lease audits if you're trying to do the lease audits of 200 units when you're doing the due diligence on a deal, to invoice coding. Tenant communication has been huge, so both on the delinquency side, for checking when rent's going to come in, to the sales side, so speed to lead, kind of thing, right? In marketing, the quicker you are to get back to people, the better. Any data rich environments with kind of latent insights, so predictive analytics, rent forecasting. If you have a lot of like disparate data that maybe is not nearly as obvious for a human to be able to kind of figure out different trends. Customer experiences at scale. So I mentioned some, a couple examples, but also on the maintenance side, particularly, I think it's really good. There are some things that we're doing with synthetic data when data volume's low, but generally speaking, poor data quality, low data volume are difficult. I think there's still some areas where human judgment and creativity still has not really been replaced. I don't think ChatGPT, for example, is coming up with any really original ideas. And there is there is still a lot of hallucinations that are happening. So I think those are
Agreed.
kind of just some areas where like maybe it's a good fit or bad fit.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Brian, do you have any thoughts on the topic?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, Cody kind of alluded to it. Everyone's kind of looking around. The space is moving so fast. There's so much going on. People saying we've got to get into AI, right? Without actually taking a step back and saying, well,
Yeah.
what's the problem we're trying to solve? What are the pain points that we have in our enterprise right now, where we think that AI or something we haven't been able to code in the past, that there may be a more efficient way of doing things, or more data, more information that we can learn. We do that. So, a lot of companies, particularly smaller companies, right, that don't have large R&D budgets, are afraid of falling behind in the space. So that's not everyone's panicking, but everyone is rushing to get in. And I'm encouraging people just get in and start using it, start trying it. Try and see if you can answer a question that you have that you're able to figure out another way. So I think it's how you start to evaluate it, but it all starts with the why. What is the problem that we're trying to solve for? Maybe it's AI, maybe it's just good old-fashioned coding, but that's, I
Yeah.
think, where everything starts.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, just because you have a hammer doesn't mean that everything is a nail, right?
Right.
Yeah, Avi, any thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, I broadly agree. I mean, you got to see that. Are you over engineering simple problems just because AI is available now, or maybe something can just be
Right.
solved with a rule-based system or a simple workflow, right? And it's also good to look at the use case. We look at a spectrum from efficiencies all the way to differentiation, and if you just look at some of the narrow scenarios where you can maybe detect anomalies or missed sales opportunities, if you can focus on that, you will have measurable outcomes right away. So that increases the value of AI. And I read this interesting statement. Somebody said that if AI is not plugging into some kind of bottom line, top line revenue or KPI or legal obligation, then it's just a toy, not a tool.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that, are you harnessing AI as a tool? And then on the other side of the spectrum is, if you have, and I agree with Brian, because if your data is highly fragmented and low quality and it's not a low fidelity environment, it's no good. But if you've been able to get some sense of that, you could start creating some differentiating outcomes, create some knowledge advantage from the proprietary data that you have. But many firms are not there yet. So that's kind of a North Star.
Mm-hmm. No, that's excellent. Thank you. And Daniel, how about you? Any comments?
Yeah, a lot of good points made about
Yeah.
where things fit in. I do think in real estate sometimes um, like we're overthinking that your data has to be clean and structured and ready to go, because one of the strengths of AI is that you can throw whatever messiness that you have at it.
Mm.
Like your folder full of documents and files. And so having like a safe environment to do that, where it's low friction, where the real estate professionals who are living on, their desktop and their downloads folder in Excel and PowerPoint, like don't sleep on getting that stuff in, and then helping teams work together, because real estate is a team sport. And then I think the Brian's point about good old fashioned code, the interesting thing that's happened with AI is that it got really good at writing software first, and the
Yeah.
software agents are the use case of agents that truly are transformative for the work of creating software. I literally have 3 agents that are working right now for me that are like popping up. If you see my eyes, and I don't have to do anything, but they're
Yeah.
working right now. And so that means that you can automate things that it would have taken too much time or cost you too much before. You just didn't have the skill set, because AI is like democratizing coding, one, and it's
Yeah.
making it happen a whole lot faster too.
Way, way faster, I think, than anybody anticipated. I mean, I certainly going back, 5 years ago, I don't think we could have imagined that we would be where we are in terms of AI,
A year ago.
a year ago, even. Yeah, exactly. Well, on that
Naval
note,
Ravikant. Naval Ravikant said something interesting the other
yeah.
day. He said that AI is essentially turned English into a programming language.
Hmm. That's smart. I like that. I like that. Well, just to follow on for this one as well. I mean, Avi, what role do technology partners play in demonstrating the value of AI and other innovations to commercial real estate professionals?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'll kind of break it up into 2 parts. If you just look at the real estate industry, it's traditionally been behind the curve in tech adoption. Even though the last 5, 6 years, there's been a proliferation of prop tech. There's so many prop tech players now, but generally they've been behind, right? It's more of an interpersonal relationship business, and you cannot automate all of that out. So if you're kind of a decent size firm and you're bringing in, let's say, a hyperscaler like the AWS or Azure or Google's, what they're going to enable for you is just the foundation models that are available to you, the environment in which you can safely access AI. They might monitor the machine learning infrastructure for you, maybe help you make some strategic market fit kind of decisions, provide you some education, training, workshops. So basically, they increase time to value for you. So that's the hyperscaler side.
Mm-hmm.
Now the other thing is, if you just look at AI, you can divide into 3 layers, like I say. So the lowest layer is the data, and the domain specific data, and then the hyper personalized data based on persona, whether you're FM tech or your producer broker, there's some personalization around your data. So there's that layer. And then there's the whole AI stack that you hear of, the swirl in the news with the foundation models, and every week there's a new model being delivered, and there's agentic toolkits and operator and all these things, a lot of noise. And on top of that are the apps and the workflows and the products. So if I'm a company that's operating, if you're just building a wrapper on top of AI, then you have no moat, because the hyperscalers are actually delivering these solutions right away. Today, if I go into, let's say, a Gemini, and I want to look up details of a property address, it actually spits back quite a bit of information in a format I want. It's doing pretty well. So where an emerging company can focus on is if you can have deep domain knowledge and don't build wrappers, but deep customization into a workflow. So domain specific intelligence. If you can do that, and the hyperscalers are not going to do that because they have no reason to, they can't scale with that,
Yeah, that's right.
but the players can.
That's right. That's a great point. Any follow on to that, Brian or Daniel or Cody?
Yeah, I guess I would say, just for for smaller firms, which I think is kind of the perspective that we have, and where you're not necessarily focused all day, every day on what your technology solutions are, right? Because you're also dealing with your revenue side, you're dealing with your marketing side, you've got a whole bunch of different hats you've got to wear. Having a good technology partner, don't try to go it alone, so I guess what I would say, right? There's certain things you can try and figure out and play around. But if you're considering a real investment in moving forward with some AI adoption, it's critical to have someone who actually can help you sift through that noise and help you figure out exactly what is going to help you, guide you towards solving the problem that you have.
Mm-hmm.
I agree, don't go it alone, but I would also say like build your own muscle. The best way to find value in AI is to combine an understanding of what the technology can do and what your business needs. I think that's actually a whole lot easier for the people in the business seats, because the business world is more complex, bespoke. It's happening only, inside the walls of your office, where you can get lots of information about what's going on in AI, too much, and you can try it out yourself. So my suggestion is really like get familiar with it, and not just the free stuff that you can do on the internet, but the things that you can sign up for and try some of these agents around like
Mhm.
deep research and other things. So you can really wrap your head around the capabilities. And definitely, I think working with partners when it comes to building something bespoke to deliver that. If you're a real estate
Yeah.
shop, it doesn't make sense for you to hire software engineers directly.
Yeah.
But you should have an idea of like what you think this thing could do for you without, fully delegating that to a consultant.
Yeah, that's the whole core versus context argument, right? I mean, certainly you want to be able to leverage your strengths and offload the things that you aren't great at potentially. Cody, it looked like you were about to say something.
No, I think I think both Brian and Daniel have like really good points, but they're just coming from different perspectives, right? So a smaller, more medium-sized firm, I think is you're going to be utilizing an outside group because your domain expertise is retail triple net, for example.
Yeah.
But you have that domain expertise, you know where those problems are, and maybe you need help figuring out, okay, we have this problem. I think, I have an inkling, and to Daniel's point, right? Like if you have that muscle, you'll be able to at least have that inkling that, hey, I think there might be something here. I read about something here. Or I've tried this tool and it wasn't quite right, but if I connected this to this, then it would be right, right? And so I think that's really where technologies players can kind of come into play. If you have that domain expertise, you know your problem set really the best. You know how it's being solved today. Technology partner can come in and say, and either connect two disparate applications that already exist, or build something custom for you, or really kind of help you get to a solution quicker. As well as, I think Avi made some great points as far as you just don't know what you don't know sometimes. And so sometimes technology partners can be really good to just come in and say, hey, this is what's possible. Here's what we're seeing at this firm. Here's what we're seeing these guys do. Here's what we're seeing these guys do.
Yeah.
See if that sparks any ideas, or kind of helps stumble your way to a solution, or a potential opportunity.
Absolutely. 100% agree with that. Yeah, for sure. All right, we'll switch gears just a little bit. This is more maybe a little bit more in the line of soft skills, but how do we talk about driving innovation and overcoming resistance for both developers and commercial real estate professionals? What steps can we take to drive innovation internally to present the right technology investment options for decision makers who may not be very tech savvy? And in fact, I mean, in a lot of places, and certainly in this industry, maybe a lot of the decision makers are not tech savvy. Any thoughts? Cody, I will start with you if you can.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of alluded to earlier, right? I think having very tight, small application sets and a very specific problem that you're trying to solve with a specific ROI. I think Avi mentioned it really well, and both Daniel and Avi in really large organizations are probably pretty used to selling innovation through like a different, very complex value chain. And Brian, in his own right, working with a lot of like old school CRE guys.
Yeah.
But I think having a very tight use case, and having a very specific ROI, and it being very apparent what you're getting out of it, and being able to get quick to value, right? So that's something, that we've seen a lot, and that we'll usually push back with clients as well, right? Where somebody comes in with this huge grandiose idea of something they want to build, but it's going to take forever to get to value. And, that's going to be a really hard sell to somebody that's like a little bit more traditional, or, it's not going to quickly see an ROI. So if you have kind of tight use cases, a very clear, return, and you can quickly get to value, over the course of a few months, or even shorter, utilizing some of the, AI coding tools that are out there, to Daniel's point. I think that, that's like usually the best way, because at the end of the day, it's very rare that somebody, no matter how technology avoidant they are, if they see the return and they see it quickly, and it's a very tight use case that they understand, I think that's generally the best way to sell.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I
That-
couldn't agree more. Yeah, go ahead.
I've had to go through this internally as well. And when you're trying to make the case to folks who are transacting every day, right? Of, this is where a direction I think we should head. Part of the sell is pique curiosity, right? Get them curious about some of the things they could be doing, get them a little more excited about it. It is all about value. It is all about, those use cases and getting to that end result. There's some simple things within AI that you can actually just show. You can kind of show them that end result and get that little bit of a, oh wow, that happened fast. That response gets, and then you can talk about all the metrics, right? It's got to pencil out, but getting people excited about how fast something could be done that they used to dread doing, I think really can get people's attention.
Yeah, that's always attractive, right? Avi, Daniel, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I agree for the things that you're like the initiatives that you're really going after, that having really like a tight scope, as Cody's talking about, is important. But I think that's one of two approaches to kind of fostering innovation inside your company. So you have your really like focus and top-down efforts, but the bottoms up is, I think, equally important, because your people on the front lines are going to have a really like keen understanding of the business challenges they face, probably be really motivated if you're working a lean team like so many of us are over the last few years. And so that necessity is the mother of all innovation. And so what you do for that group is you create a safe way for them to innovate. Make sure that you're purchasing an AI platform, most likely if you're a smaller shop, that can protect all of your IP and your client's IP, and that has the right controls, just like you would want people using your Microsoft Office that you pay for versus like some free notes app on the web, right? And so creating that safe space, letting people know that you'll be rewarded if you're suddenly much more productive for doing this, and we just find more work for you. I think that goes together to finding the innovation in the crowd, which is equally, if not more fruitful than the few top-down bets you're going to make.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Pre-GPT generative AI, the access to AI machine learning was limited and siloed because it was the R&D or the data science team.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as these technologies came up, we very quickly went into some of the self-service, giving access directly to the toolkit to everybody in a safe manner, like Daniel mentioned. So removing barriers to that access increases engagement tremendously. And then what we also did was we said, okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the business is participating fully. So when we started running some of these hackathons that we do, we made it mandatory that a hackathon team has a business SME, a data scientist, an engineer, and they're all together. And so whatever they're producing is going into production or in front of the client very quickly. So that's the kind of material and tangible outcome, and we've been able to be quite successful. It's gathered quite a bit of traction.
Yeah, that's excellent. I was going to ask, what are some of the biggest barriers? I mean, obviously, literal access to the tool set, is a big part of that, right? And then I think you are going to stumble on some other things once you provide that access that will move the needle, certainly in one direction or another. Let's talk briefly about some more, I'd say, financial aligned topics, right? So let's talk about investment and asset strategy and that type of thing. How is AI transforming investment strategy? So risk assessment, asset management, and commercial real estate. Any thoughts on that? I certainly come from a different background than real estate, right? So I'm interested in the topic. I'm interested in the answers, but I don't have any answers. So I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say.
I can jump in with a couple. I think there are a lot of tasks in those things that involve a lot of internet research. You're going out to find the data to create your assumptions for your model, or looking for examples in other places, like the thing that you want to do, or just trying to get a lay of the land in terms of regulations, politics, whatever, right? Like all this information, for the most part, is available on the public internet. And big part of folks' job is like gathering this stuff, and filtering down to what they need. And AI can now do this research work for you faster, more accurately. Does it get bored or off task? So that's a really like key part. It's maybe not end to end, but it's certainly useful in a wide range of those tasks. And the same thing goes for either taking a big pile of unstructured data and turning it into data. Like you're looking at a deal and you need to do you need to do some type of lease analysis or reconciliation, and pulling data out of just reams of pages is a common task in some of those workflows, and AI really shines at that. And so really kind of the two areas jump to mind for me.
Yeah, great point. Longer attention span, right? For sure, than most humans, I would say. Brian or Avi,
Yeah.
Cody?
I'll just say, talking to some of our property management folks and some of the things that they're seeing applications, it actually changes the mindset of how they're managing properties from a reactive to a preventative, mindset, because they can take in this data, take in tenant data, take in other information that allows them to kind of just be out in front of it and anticipate, things that are going to be happening with their different assets. So I think that was an important point. You may not have had the ability to do that, as Daniel mentioned. There's mountains of data out there, and it's really, really hard to go through and sift through and really spot those trends. That's something that AI absolutely excels at.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think really good points. One of the things, Atlantic Retail, JLL, and CBRE all produce OMs, right? And if you're on the underwriting side, every single one of those OMs is going to look slightly different. One of the really good use tools I've seen recently within a multifamily underwriting shop was basically ingesting all these tools, and then you get financials from different sources, and every single operator classifies things a little bit differently, right? And things are going to come from Yardi or RealPage or some other piece of software, and being able to take the data that's formatted very differently, compile it into your standardized format, has been like a custom GPT agent tool that I've seen that works really, really well. It still needs, there's still some issues, right? I think it
Yeah.
still needs human oversight, but that's really interesting, and one that anybody can use right now. On the asset management side, you often have investor reporting. So a tool that I've seen work really, really well, and that a firm I know implemented, was instead of typing out your financial supplements, right? So usually as providing investor reporting, just like a REIT, right? You're providing
Yeah.
raw
Yep.
financials, balance sheet, rent roll, et cetera. A T12. But you're also providing a financial supplement, right? A narrative that goes with this. And so usually that is a pretty time-consuming process. But instead, I've seen that turn it a 10-minute Loom video recorded as they walk through the financials. They copy the transcript, and then they put it into a custom GPT bot where they basically they trained it. Hey, I want these 7 sections. Overview, what revenue is doing, what's going on at the property, what's happening in the capital market, any capital markets activity for the asset, and then management, not forecast, but management outlook, right? And they'll just talk to it for 10 minutes, grab the transcript, pop it into a custom GPT bot that's been trained to produce this standardized output. And that's taken, I think, probably a 2-day activity for an asset manager, down to a couple hours.
Yeah.
I'm talking about across maybe 10
Yeah.
assets.
That's actually a pattern that works really, really nicely in this AI world of just recording something and turning it into like a structured document, like a report like this, or a how-to, for your standard operating procedures and things like that. Man, it's going to take a while to create a doc, but you can record a video and just have people talk. Maybe it's the person that's retiring that has all the knowledge. You just record them, and then it's kind of memorialized. But you can copy paste that. Let's record a video and turn it into X, I think, to a lot of different um, use cases within commercial real estate.
Yeah, traditionally the work was, you have identified a certain data source. Now you have this data platform. You're going to try to create some kind of schema and bring it all in. That used to be months and months of effort. And with this whole multimodal nature of generative AI, like everybody mentioned, you can bring it all together. And what that starts doing is now you have your traditional data that you can marry with some of the more non-traditional data, like the investor sentiment or the behavior.
Sure.
And you can start mining some interesting insights. For example, you could have an AI product that helps you create some loan terms that are based off many other pieces of data. And of course, you'll evaluate it, but you can
Yeah.
get some interesting insights. In climate risk, for example, sometimes you say, okay, I have this data center and it's in a safe zone, but maybe the power to that data center is coming from a utility, a portion of that utility is in a flood zone. Now, typically the AI tools won't capture this, but with sophisticated, sorry, the regular tools won't capture this, but the AI tools are actually able to figure this out and give you this secondary risk. And you can then put that into your whole risk process. So there's a lot of interesting insights you can start delivering.
That's fat. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's very sharp. Fantastic. I know I'm watching the clock as well, and I've got tons of great questions, but let's do we'll switch it up a little bit. Let's talk about and something that I've been concerned with, I think a lot of people are concerned with. Let's talk about sort of the ethical security implications of AI in this business. And every business sector is going to have some type of reckoning with the ethical and security considerations. But how can commercial real estate firms leverage predictive analysis to anticipate market shifts and optimize pricing? I don't know who wants to start with that one. That's a hard question.
I can probably speak just because we're in our own little niche of the
Sure.
commercial real estate. We're focused so much on retail. I remain incredibly open-minded and curious about what things it can do. I don't know that it's fully there yet for retail
Yeah.
in entire, where, if you look at some other broader asset classes that maybe are a little bit more commoditized, retail, it might matter which side of the street you're on, in terms of the actual boots on the ground and getting things done. So I don't know that we're necessarily ready to predict overall market shifts. But that's not to say we're not going to get there. I think that's certainly on the horizon in terms of where rents head, how you marry that information with broader economic indicators and how those impact sales. I think that stuff's probably coming and probably already being worked on in many places. So I think the numbers on the page are really, really important, but the boots in the ground across all of our business lines really still do matter at the end of the day in making those relationships and making those decisions on how deals get done.
We worked
think-
with a,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, we worked with a multifamily private equity firm that they were specifically in the private markets, and they were much smaller, right? What you kind of consider subscale or emerging, an emerging sponsor. And they had, a decent amount of units there. They had, 3,000 units, but they certainly didn't have the wide data set that some other people have. And there are tools out there, but one thing interesting that I think we built for them that was really kind of cool was they looked to the public markets. So the REITs, right, which have 30,000 units, 40,000 units, et cetera, have very wide and deep data sets. And they were actually compiling all the public data, right, because the public markets have data reporting requirements that are very different than the private markets. And they were compiling that data and then synthesizing it down. And I think they were probably one of the better positioned firms for kind of the 2020, late 2022, 2023 rent declines and supply crunch that you started to see across the markets, where a lot of private operators got really surprised by it. These guys weren't surprised by it because they were kind of listening to the public markets and like being able to distill down that data. And very few people, apart from Warren Buffett, have the time to sit through and dig through read 10Ks every single day when you're operating a business, but being able to get kind of those bullet points and being able to pull public data, compile it, and get really actionable insights for what's going on in supply in my market, what's going on in rent, what are the public comparables seeing. I think that was like one of the more interesting places that I saw for kind of price. I wouldn't call it, that was less price prediction, but you were seeing what was going on in the market. You saw rents starting to soften, occupancy start to drop, and supply, start to increase across the market. And I think that's a good indicator for what at least for what a multifamily operator really cares about.
Yeah,
That's correct, because
Yeah, go
There is
ahead.
there is a little bit of a time lag when this insight becomes available to you. But if you have a fairly decent forecasting model or a predictive model, you can get to a pretty near-term, real-time kind of dynamic pricing model based on just the data that's coming in. And that allows you to shift your rent up and down based on the peak season or if there's something else happening in that area and so on.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things that I just heard kind of the consensus here is that if you're still reading 10Ks, the amount of 10Ks that you would have to read to keep up with folks that are using AI tools to do that type of data analysis, and you're doing it by hand, you're probably going to get lapped a few hundred times, right? I mean, it's just not humanly possible to digest that much of information. As AI adoption grows, what are the key concerns around data privacy and ethical use of AI in commercial real estate? Any thoughts on that, Avi or Brian, perhaps?
Yeah, I think everybody by now is aware of the terms like bias and hallucination, and you've been kind of warned enough about these. But what starts happening is as you start customizing your AI product, some of the bias actually is pretty much inbuilt, and you cannot remove it entirely. And what I've recently heard is that some of the larger companies are producing guardrail type of products where there's a content safety toolkit or some kind of verification toolkit of what's being produced. And I think we need more of those. And I think everybody should start getting aware that this can happen. There's a lot of regulation coming in. EU has a AI Act. I think California has certain bills around this type of regulation. So we're going to hear more of this. But I'll take a slightly different example here just to reinforce how the concerns around legal and privacy come in. And we encountered this very early on in our journey. Things have changed now, but this very early on. Adobe came up with their Firefly product. I don't know, most people might have heard about it, not. And essentially what they did was they were generating new images based off a repo of stock images that they had. Put some natural language and you get an image. And one question we ask them is, okay, so what if I generate an image and my competitor then generates an image and there's overlap? Who owns the IP of that image? And
Hmm.
at that time, they did not have an answer. They do, but essentially, it's you need to talk about IP indemnity when you're
Hmm.
talking about content being generated. Are you running the proper content checks? So you have to embed that into your overall AI journey at some point.
That's a great point. Brian, were you about to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, if you want to talk about ethical use, I mean, if, I guess misrepresentation in some ways is something that I'd be concerned about, right? I mean, everyone saw Google's release last week of the amazing video they can produce, which, you know, has the ability to turn the whole concept of social proof right on its head, right? What can you trust? I think to Avi's point, there's always going to be, whether it's hallucinations or bias or some, fuzziness in the data. I'm sure there's a lot of comments in the chat about that. And you have to be able to trust but verify as you kind of go through everything that you're using. But this is, way beyond photoshopping some extra cars in the parking lot to make it look busy.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things that are out there that it's worth being skeptical as you see things, right? As data is out there and is presented to you. I think in our world, I think a lot of those ethical concerns around IP of the creative set, right, of folks who are creating new work, writing and that stuff. I think it's a little less applicable here, not entirely out, but I think it's a little bit different in the way that we're digesting data and trying to reuse it to be more efficient and be more productive. So I'm a little less concerned in that regard. But I think Avi's points of who owns what is valid and very
Yeah.
fair that we should be aware of.
Yeah. Skepticism, I think, in this case is a little bit healthy, right? For sure, I think. Um, Daniel, maybe I'll toss this one over to you to start. What emerging technologies will have the biggest impact? This is always a fun topic. Blue sky, whatever. Let's, project out. Uh, we led off talking about 5 years ago, and then we shortened it to one year ago. Uh, Next 5 to 10 years. 10 years might as well be light years, right? So how about biggest impact in commercial real estate in the next 2 years?
Yeah. Um, so if you've been watching and paying attention, you were seeing inklings of it with some of the browser use or computer using agents that multiple of the AI labs are trying to create. Um, and you may have heard about agents a lot, and really like an agent versus a chatbot. The agent is doing work for you, sometimes like over the course of many hours. And for these agents to work today, they need a lot of tools, kind of specialized tools that give them the knowledge they need or let them take actions in the world. Um, the wild card in all this is the computer using agents, because we've already designed all these tools for humans.
Yeah.
Every SaaS app, every office productivity app, they're all designed for humans. So when the AI agents are able to use the browser and use the computer as well as a human, and they have all this knowledge from their pre-training, and they can search the web instantly, and and they can talk on the phone. I think you put all that together, and I think that's poised to have dramatic impacts in commercial real estate and pretty much every other industry.
100% agreed. Cody, how about you? Thoughts on that one?
Oh, wow. That's a hard one to follow up on. I think that was a really good one. I mean, I think that probably on an ongoing basis, right? Like I think generally speaking, right, it's just going to be an adoption curve that's going to be the biggest impact, right? You kind of like see the adoption curve of the internet or cell phones, and I think AI is going to be very similar, right? A couple of things that I thought were, you know, that have been kind of interesting or just percolating in my brain as uh, Brian kind of mentioned, right, this trust thing, right? And we probably all remember, maybe Boomer or Gen X, parents that would just see something on Facebook and be like, "This is, well, I found this on the internet. This is true," right? And I think that we're probably going through that same thing with millennials, with us, right? And AI and like being able to trust it. But there's also that adoption, right? And I think open AI, for example, and I don't want to be too focused on just like one type of
Yeah.
AI because there's so many things that are going on right now. But they released some data that it was being used very differently by different generations, right? So I think as you see this kind of like AI native generation start to come into the workforce over the next 5 years, that's what I think will be really interesting. Is like this adoption curve, because the way they're using it, and the way they talk to it, and the way they implement it into their work streams. I think Daniel and Avi mentioned this earlier, right? With giving people access to the tools. I think that's going to be I think that's going to be probably one of the more interesting things is watching this new workforce come into this new generation, which is like really AI native, come into the workforce, because I think it's going to be far more inventive and far more impactful than maybe necessarily a specific technology.
Yeah. Great call. Great call out. I'm going to also ask Avi and Brian too, because again, it's a hard question, but it's also a fun one. Brian, any thoughts?
Yeah, you're not gonna let us off the hook on this one, right?
Oh.
No, that's I think that's perfectly fair. That's what we should be looking at, right? I really like Cody's answer about increased adoption, right? And the more that you're going to continue to see more and more people use it, you'll find use cases that you hadn't necessarily even thought about before. And to Daniel's point of having an agent, right, that doesn't get tired, that doesn't need a break, that can sit there and do all the things that you would do on
Yeah.
and make those decisions, right? That's I think what's really interesting is there's so much nuance in what commercial real estate professionals do that in many ways really can't be coded. There's that institutional experience sort of thing. So the extent that you're able to download that metaphorically into an agent to get some of that decision-making capability of what all of our professionals do, I think is really, really exciting. I think of how much the space has moved just technologically in the last 5 years alone, right? We all got in the business and you drew a trade area by drawing concentric rings, even though you knew that people didn't trade in concentric rings, even drive times. Then all of a sudden we start to get the access to mobile data, and that really refined how we look at trade areas and how we look at the ways that people shop, the way that people work and commute. The ability to take a lot of that data and predict how markets are going to react, I think is really, really important. And I know it's already happening today. I think it's only better, right? And And I think my credo with AI, which I borrow from someone, is today is the worst it's ever going to be.
Yeah.
Only going to get better as things continue to improve. So I'm excited about what's going to come down.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that. Avi, anything to add?
Yeah, you hear the comment around, AI is going to take away jobs, and you see calculations like, okay, I'm going to save this much time on this product, and you multiply that by hourly rate and hours in a year, and you get some interesting numbers, but that's not reality. I mean, in reality, what's going to happen is that you're going to get a lot of hyper personalization. People are talking about agents and assistants, right? So maybe I'm a producer and I have my personal Jarvis, which is helping me throughout my workflow, from lead generation to generating the collateral to helping me with my RFPs and landing and doing the site fitment. And I can provide a VR tour to my client, which is real-time personalized. So I don't have to, they wear the headset and I put in a comment in there and they can design the space and get a VR tour right there and then. You can have those kind of things happen to you. You know, I'm in my workspace and it's hyper personalized. The IoT sensors are figuring out, real time how comfortable I am or what kind of amenities I want, but where's my calendar looking like. So I think this is going to come first before my job gets taken away. So that's kind of the whole
Yeah.
point of the next generation of tools.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. Well, I think a good segue and perhaps a closing question, or depending on how much time we have left. But is there anything that you as commercial real estate leaders or other leaders in the business, anything that we need to be doing to prepare for these changes? Anything that we need to learn on, to take a course on, things that we can do now to prepare for those next 2, 3, 5 years?
I'll jump in a little bit. Again, at the smaller level, at the folks that don't have a whole lot of money to invest, just start using it. Start using it every day in one way or another. Right? You all got Microsoft. Use Copilot. Try it. See what it can do for you. See what it can't. But also reach out and talk to others. Share information about what other folks are doing in other businesses, and see use cases that folks outside of commercial real estate are using, and say, okay, where can I draw a parallel? Right? Are there tools out there where it's talking to my calendar and it knows that I have a trip coming up, and it knows that I like to stay at a certain hotel, or this client's in and they want to go to a certain restaurant. Let's make sure that the AI bot can then go make my reservations for me. And all those little things that you can connect those dots. How do we can apply that to our business, right? What are some of those use cases that we can get imaginative on? So I would say you can't start until you start. Get in there and start using it and be really, really curious. That'd be my advice.
Be curious. A little Ted Lasso for us. Yeah. Anyone else want to try that one?
I think that absolutely, I agree with what Brian just said. I think also, like, there's a lot of news, there's a lot of noise, but pay attention to what's being published from the top AI labs. So OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google. They're in an all-out arms race, and they're really like bringing the future forward. And so if you see like what capabilities they're bringing on, it might not be immediately applicable to you, but you'll get a much greater sense of like what's going on in the future. Like when they release a research preview, it means that they're investing a lot in an area and more is going to come. So with that computer or browser use example I gave earlier, both OpenAI and Anthropic have had research previews out for a while. Google has one too. And if you follow their blogs, that like you will have read about that. And so you'll have heard of this and start thinking about, oh, what could I do if I had, this, not non-sleeping robot that follows my instructions really well, using the computer all day long, with access to my context and things like that. You'll be able to skate to where the puck is going.
Yeah, I like that. That's great. Cody or Avi?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we're thinking about a lot when we're hiring engineers, for example, is we're really focused on the people that are utilizing the tools. And so we're really kind of like hiring and filtering out for that and trying to make sure that I mean, because we know, and I mean, we don't think that our industry is going totally away, but we know that the job of of a computer programmer is going to be very different in even a year than it is today. And while this is like, there's big legacy programs and it still isn't really good at ingesting or making large changes to like large scale applications. Small scale applications now are, we can produce extremely, extremely fast. And so we're thinking about that a lot and making sure that we're hiring people because we think that that'll be, how else are we going to be competitive if we're not AI native and how we're building applications and how we're building software. And so I think that, but I think that, obviously we build software for a living. That's what we do. And particularly in this space. And so, maybe that's easy for us to say, but I would also just think about it, when hiring, at a commercial real estate firm, right? Talking with, if you're talking with an analyst, I think that's an important interview question. How are you using AI right now to, when you're underwriting a property? And really figuring that out. And I think, the final message I'd have there is what is there's the flip side of that spectrum where people are becoming a little over reliant on it. And I get a chat GPT answer in an interview. And so being able to figure out, okay, who are the people that are utilizing these tools? And this is like a good lesson just for companies in general, right? You want to be able to utilize the tools to maximize efficiency and to do things that, and to do things that are repetitive or lower value for you as a company or you as an employee or you as a person. But you still want to make sure that you want to make sure that your company, your employees, or you as a person are not, still have the critical thinking ability and still have the ability to really, to understand the core concepts and understand the core stuff. So you're not just kind of becoming, it becomes very obvious very quickly when work product was produced solely by an AI without any sort of human intervention or human, critique.
For sure. For sure. I'm sure you're not the first person to have experienced that where you get a chat GPT answer in an interview. Avi,
Yeah,
you
totally
want to
agree
close
with
us out?
Daniel, Cody, and Brian. And there is within the organization, there is a skills gap. So you got to take proactive measures to make sure that, the employees are skilled up. You're doing a lot of learning sessions and brown bags and making an effort to put together a learning program. And also to understand that earlier decision making was slow hierarchical decision making. AI is going to break that boundary. It's democratized, like Daniel mentioned. So now you have these expert networks that can form because AI works when you have access to data. That means that people can look at the insights at any level of the organization if allowed to do so. So that creates a very interesting dynamic around decision making and what to pursue. So be aware of that organizational change that will come through.
Outstanding point. Outstanding point. Thank you, Bobby.
Bill, can I ask one more question?
Yeah, of course.
Am I the only one that says please and thank you when I'm prompting my AI?
I do say please and thank you to Alexa, and sometimes Siri. I don't know.
You
I
never
think it's
know.
good
If they
manners.
become
I don't know.
conscious, maybe it may be good that we were polite. You don't want to be that one guy that was, that was rude to the AI when it becomes
Right,
fully
exactly.
sentient.
There was a while where if you would offer the AI a tip, it would actually do a better job. This was actually like backed up in research papers on some of the older models. And so,
So
I think they said it costs them like $10 million a day or something crazy of extra processing power by people saying please and thank you. It was like something wild.
Yeah. Sergey Brin just made a comment. He said that if you're rude to the AI, it seems to operate better. This is his latest comment, like a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
Well, that just vindicates me.
Yeah, right. I can't get much more human than that, I suppose.
Oh.
All right. Wonderful. Well, thank you, gentlemen. This was great. I learned a lot. Thrilled to be here. As I said earlier, Will, thank you. Brian, Avi, Daniel, Cody. Will, you want to carry us home?
Yeah, thank you all so much. Real pleasure. Learned a lot. Hope everybody else felt the exact same way. It was a pleasure having you join us. Austin, I'm going to kick things over to you for that BizCred demo, and then feel free to bring it back to me, and I'll carry us out. But want to thank Avi, Brian, Daniel, the whole Cody, the whole team, really for joining us. What a pleasure. Thank you all so much for sharing your insights, and special thanks, of course, to Codelit for their help here. I'll be back in a few minutes to close things out, but Austin, want to kick it over to you.
Yep. Thanks, Will. Very well done, everyone. I just wanted to take a quick minute to kind of show off the latest and the greatest technology coming out of the Bisnow ecosystem, which we call BizCred. BizCred was essentially built to be a commercial real estate lead gen and prospecting tool that essentially gives you the ability to identify the people and the companies in commercial real estate that you want to transact with. So just as a very quick example, let's say you are looking for every office developer in New York. You can click off developer. You can then segment based on asset classes, so say office, and then drop down into particular states or regions. Let's click off New York here. And then from there, you can also go through the people who work at these companies to identify every senior level, executive level decision maker who is also focused on office. And let's close it out with just saying people who are based in New York. And what you are left with are tailored lists of prospects with accurate contact information so you can reach out to these individuals knowing that they are relevant people that you should be doing business with. So wanted to go through that very quickly. Thank you, Will. I will turn it over to you. If anybody wants to book a time to talk about this further, I'll drop a link in the chat. And then for anyone who stuck around to the end, you can get the attendee list for free by plugging in the code that I'll drop in there as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Austin. I have to say, I use BizCred quite a bit when I'm trying to figure out who's the latest and greatest in the program as well. So really, really a great platform, and obviously always happy to work with our sister company over there. Want to thank all y'all for being a part of today's program. Thank you all again so much for tuning in. What an absolute pleasure. We'll keep up this series if we continue to have conversations as great as this one, and I'm really planning on, really taking this home into the next year and thinking a little bit about what's next. So thank you all. Really, we're up on time here, but want to thank all you all for joining us today, our audience, everybody for tuning in around the world, around the country here. If you missed any of the panel, like I said, don't worry. We'll replay the thing to you afterwards. We'll send it around. And other than that, want to thank all you for joining us today. And my name is Will Follett. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.